Did you know over 40 million families in the US are trapped in debt right now? And yet somehow, you still think you're the only one hiding credit card statements, the only one praying between bills, the only one silently wondering if God's disappointed in you. But what if your debt isn't a curse? What if it's a symptom of a system that was never built for you to win, just to keep you spinning? That guilt you're carrying. Most of it isn't even yours. You didn't fail, you were funneled. And today, we're flipping the script. By the end of this video, you'll know how to discern between survival and sabotage, replace shame with strategy, and build a biblical money mindset that unlocks real kingdom freedom. You were never built to stay stuck in lack. Tired of financial advice that leaves God out? This channel is your place for biblical wisdom on money, debt, and wealth. Every video is built to help you honor God with your finances and build lasting, kingdom-centered success. Before we dive in, hit that like button. Then share this with that spouse of yours who keeps pretending those financial problems will magically disappear. And don't forget to subscribe, so we can keep showing up with real talk, biblical strategy, and content that reminds you, you were God built for more. Have you ever read Proverbs 22:7 and instantly felt like God was looking at your bank account with disappointment? That sinking guilt when you hear, the borrower is slave to the lender. Like somehow your student loans made you spiritually disqualified. Like God was shaking his head every time your credit card balance showed up. But let me ask you something real. Did you know the average American household now carries over $103,000 in total debt, including mortgages, student loans, and credit cards? So if you've been sitting in silence thinking you're the only one weighed down, you're not. You're one of over 40 million households trying to breathe in a system built to squeeze. But here's the twist nobody told you in Sunday school. That verse in Proverbs wasn't a curse, it was a caution. Let's go back. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." It wasn't written to shame the single mum swiping her card for groceries. It wasn't aimed at the first-gen college student taking out loans to build a better life. It wasn't condemning the entrepreneur who took a risk on a dream. Back then, borrowing didn't mean financing a couch or a new car. It meant survival. If a family's crops failed or a parent got injured, there was no GoFundMe or government check. People sold themselves into temporary slavery just to make it through the year. This was life or death. And yet, God didn't ignore it. He didn't say, well, you got yourself into this, deal with it. He created financial reset systems for his people. In Deuteronomy 15, he commanded debt to be forgiven every 7 years. Imagine that. Every 7 years, a full release. No collections, no garnishments, just grace. Then in Leviticus 25, he instituted the year of Jubilee. Every 50 years, land was returned, families reunited, and the oppressed were released. This wasn't soft policy, it was divine economics. God didn't just care about their souls, he cared about their equity. Let's look at another story most churches skip over. Before Israel left Egypt, before they stepped into freedom, God told them something wild. He said, "Ask the Egyptians for their silver, gold, and clothing." Exodus 12:35-36. And the Egyptians gave it. Why? Because God engineered a wealth transfer on the way out of slavery. He made sure they didn't just walk out with bruised backs. They walked out with provision. Because freedom without finances is fragile. Now let's bring it home. You didn't borrow because you're evil. You borrowed because you were trying to escape something. You took on debt to study, to stabilize, to survive. And while the consequences are real, the condemnation doesn't have to be. So, what does Proverbs 22:7 actually mean for us today? It means that debt limits freedom. It creates obligations. It impacts decisions. But it does not mean you're cursed. It means be wise, not ashamed. It means build a plan, not live in fear. It means don't hand over your future without understanding who's holding the contract. And if you're already in it, that's not the end of the story. Because the same God who set up sabbatical years and wealth transfers is still in the business of setting people free. So let me ask you, Did this shift how you see that verse?
Has anyone ever told you this before?
Be honest. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Let's break shame with strategy. Let's build something better. Let's move. Do you really believe debt is just a personal failure? Or have you ever stopped and asked yourself if the game was rigged before you even started playing? Let's get brutally honest. You didn't wake up one morning and say, you know what would bless my life? Crushing student loans, compounding credit card interest, and rent that eats half my paycheck. Number you woke up trying to survive, trying to make rent, trying to put your kid through school, trying to not lose your mind while gas hit $5 a gallon. And yet, somewhere between the Sunday sermon and your bank statement, you started to wonder, is this struggle my fault? Is God punishing me? Did I mess up by needing help? Let's be clear, you didn't fall. You were funneled. This system doesn't reward obedience. It rewards ownership of capital, of property, of access. And if you weren't born into it, you were born beneath it. Here's the truth they won't tell you in a pamphlet. Capitalism needs you in debt. It feeds on your exhaustion. It profits off your panic. You're not just a worker, you're a borrower, a consumer, a revenue stream. 43 million Americans owe over $1.7 trillion in student loans. That's not mismanagement. That's structure. That's the fruit of a system where education is a business, not a birthright. Now zoom out and enter the Bible. Joseph, in Egypt, second in command under Pharaoh. Did he trust God? Yes. But did he also store grain, build warehouses, and create a 7-year cushion because he knew what was coming? Absolutely. Joseph didn't rebuke the economy. He understood it. He didn't shame the hungry. He fed them. He didn't panic in famine. He planned. That's wisdom. That's kingdom strategy in a broken empire. And it's the blueprint we ignore today. Because while Joseph prepared to protect people, our churches sometimes shame those who didn't have a Joseph. You lose your job? Maybe you weren't faithful enough. Drowning in hospital bills. God doesn't bless disorder. Tithing every week while you skip meals. Maybe you're not stewarding well. But here's what they won't say from the pulpit. Poverty is not a punishment. Debt is not rebellion. And survival is not sin. If you needed a loan to go to school, to fix your car, or to keep your lights on, you didn't fail. You were navigating a system Joseph would have prepared for, but we've just been told to pray harder through. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever felt more judged by the church than helped when you were financially struggling? Did anyone ever teach you how this system works? Or were you just told to tithe and trust God? Let's talk about it in the comments, because if we don't expose the trap, we'll keep blaming the victim. And you, my friend, were never the problem. The system was. And now that we know, it's time to stop surviving in silence and start building like Joseph. With wisdom, with strategy, with vision. You're not just going to escape. You're going to lead others out. God built. Let's move. Have you ever sat down with a list of your debts, not to cry over them, but to interrogate them? Not with guilt, but with boldness. Because if debt has been wearing your name like a chain, it's time to ask, is it helping me build, or is it slowly breaking me? You see, not all debt is equal. Some debt, believe it or not, is actually strategic. It opens doors, creates leverage, and multiplies legacy. Other debt, it's an emotional escape plan, a fast swipe to silence an internal scream, a quiet response to, I feel behind, so let me buy now and deal with it later. Let's get this straight. Americans collectively owe over $17 trillion in debt, with the average person juggling everything from car loans to credit cards to buy now, pay later plans that feel easy until the payments stack like bricks on your chest. But is it all bad? Let's look at Jacob in Genesis 30. Yes, the same Jacob who wrestled with God, the same Jacob who made deals with Laban. But here's the part they don't preach about. Jacob didn't just work hard, he worked smart. He used selective breeding to grow wealth. He studied patterns, spotted opportunity, multiplied what he had. This wasn't random blessing, it was divine strategy. He took what others overlooked, the speckled and spotted goats, and turned it into an empire. That's what strategic stewardship looks like. That's what financial vision does. Now compare that to impulse debt. Credit cards max to keep up, flashy car notes with zero ROI, purchases that create short-term highs and long-term stress. One multiplies, one masks. Here's a framework I want you to write down and use every time you swipe, borrow, or say yes to a payment plan. Am I building value or just buying validation? Is this debt connected to my calling, or am I using it to pad my comfort zone? Will this purchase help me fulfill purpose, or just help me feel better today? Because there's a difference between Jacob's goat strategy and emotional Amazon purchases at 2 a.m., while whispering, God understands. Let's be even more real. Strategic debt might look like student loans to become a doctor, a mortgage to stop bleeding rent, or business funding to start what God told you to build. Destructive debt? That's when you finance image instead of impact. You chase applause over purpose. You live for likes, but it's killing your peace. Now take a breath, pull up your debts, all of them. Yes, credit cards, student loans, auto payments, medical bills, store cards. One by one, ask, tool or trap? If it's a tool, manage it with wisdom. If it's a trap, plan your escape with discipline, not shame. You don't have to be afraid of your debt, but you do have to be honest about it. And here's the kingdom truth. God won't bless what you hide, but He will bless what you handle. Drop a comment right now, one word, tool or trap. What's the biggest debt you're dealing with? How do you see it now? Be honest. Be brave. You're not the only one. But you might be the first in your family to break the pattern. Have you ever felt like every financial decision you make is another reason for God to be disappointed in you? Like every swipe of your card, every late bill, every borrowed dollar is just proof that you're failing. Not just financially, but spiritually. You're not alone. For years, many of us have sat in church pews while Proverbs 22:7 was quoted like a moral indictment. The borrower is slave to the lender. But let me ask you this. If God wanted you to feel cursed every time you needed help, why did He fill the Bible with stories of provision, mercy, and restoration? Let's unpack this verse the right way. Proverbs 22:7 is wisdom literature. It's not law, it's not condemnation, and it's definitely not your spiritual scorecard. It's a warning, a heads up, a financial truth about how systems work, not about how God sees your worth. In the ancient world, borrowing wasn't just about money, it was about survival. There were no credit unions, no mortgage brokers. If you needed to feed your family and had no crops, no animals, no options, you could sell yourself into debt servitude. It wasn't ideal, but it was a lifeline, and God knew that. So what did He do? He put protections in place. Read Leviticus 25 and Deuteronomy 15. God Himself mandated debt forgiveness every 7 years. He required jubilee resets every 50. That doesn't sound like a God trying to shame you. That sounds like a God who understood real life and made room for recovery. Fast forward to the New Testament. Paul, the apostle who wrote more books of the Bible than anyone else, wasn't just preaching. He was also a tent maker. He understood the weight of work, of income, of managing your calling and your cash. He didn't avoid debt like a plague. He managed his life with integrity, wisdom, and hustle. That's not spiritual failure. That's spiritual maturity. Now, let's get real with some numbers. Today, 66% of bankruptcies in the US are due to medical debt. Let that sit for a moment. People aren't going broke because they're reckless. They're going broke because they got sick, because they had to choose between chemo and groceries, between surgery and rent. That's not sin. That's suffering inside a broken system. So if you've been walking around feeling like God's disappointed in you because you owe, breathe. That debt may reduce your options, but it does not remove your identity. You are not your balance. You are not your bills. You are not disqualified from purpose just because you're in the red. Say this with me right now. Debt limits my options, but it doesn't limit my salvation. Now drop that in the comments if it hit your spirit. Free. Let's see who else needed to release that weight. And while you're down there, I want to know, did this reframe anything for you? Have you been carrying shame God never assigned to you?
Talk to me in the comments.
Let's remove the mask, break the myth, and walk in wisdom together. Would you still feel spiritually free if your debt never fully disappeared? Be honest. Because for many believers, financial freedom has been reduced to one thing: zero balances. And until that day comes, until the debt is gone, the loans are paid, and the numbers on the statement hit a clean $0, you carry a silent belief. I'm not really free. I'm not fully blessed. I'm not enough yet. But here's the truth most churches won't say plainly. Jesus didn't die for your credit score. He died for your freedom. And that freedom? It's not waiting on a student loan forgiveness plan. It's not riding on your mortgage payoff date. It's not delayed until you finally master budgeting without slipping up. It's available now, right in the middle of your financial mess. Galatians 5:1 says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." That includes freedom from sin, but also freedom from shame. Freedom from systems that whisper, "You're failing." Freedom from measuring your spiritual worth by your financial wins. Because let's be clear, debt can be a burden, yes, but it is not a measure of your holiness. God doesn't tally your righteousness by your credit utilization. He's not waiting for your FICO score to reach 800 before he releases your purpose. Take Abraham, for example. He's known as the father of faith, not the father of finance, but he was wealthy. Cattle, silver, gold, land. And yet, he didn't build his life around wealth. He wasn't obsessed with accumulation. He didn't hoard or manipulate to gain more. He stewarded with peace, gave generously, and passed down a legacy. His story reminds us that you can be wealthy without being consumed. You can pursue stability without sacrificing your soul. And here's where it gets personal. Somewhere along the way, we've let debt distort our identity. We've let the balance on the loan become the balance of our worth. We've let missed payments translate into self-punishment. You start thinking, if I was really disciplined, I wouldn't be here. If I had more faith, I wouldn't be under this pressure. If I was a better Christian, I wouldn't feel so anxious every time I opened my bank app. But those aren't God's thoughts. Those are the lies of a system designed to keep you hustling for worth instead of resting in grace. Here's the truth. Freedom isn't a financial status. It's a spiritual posture. It means you can be in the middle of a payment plan and still be powerful. It means you can owe something and still walk in authority. It means you can be in process and still be perfectly loved. Jesus didn't set you free so you could earn your way back to him with a perfect spreadsheet. He set you free so you could walk with peace, no matter the balance. That's what real financial freedom looks like in the kingdom. It's not about being flawless. It's about being fearless. Fearless to face your numbers. Fearless to break generational habits. Fearless to make a plan, follow through, and walk in purpose, even if it's messy at first. So I'll ask you, has your debt been distorting your sense of identity? Have you allowed balance sheets to shape your belief about who you are? Drop your thoughts below. Seriously, let's unlearn the shame and relearn what it means to walk in true freedom. We teach you how to walk free while you build. Are you using debt to build or to hide? No, really. Sit with that. Because sometimes it's not about the interest rate, it's about the intention. You tell yourself it was just a purchase. But was it? Or was it an escape? A mask? A moment of trying to feel in control when life felt out of reach? Let's get brutally honest. Not all debt is demonic, but some of it, it's self-sabotage dressed up as self-care. There are two buckets every financial decision falls into: tool or trap. Strategic debt is a tool. It creates opportunities. It builds something. Buying a home instead of wasting thousands on rent. Tool. Investing in a business that generates return. Tool. Taking out student loans to enter a higher earning field. Tool. But then there's the other side. The impulse buys. The "I deserve this" swipes at midnight. The outfit you charged because your ex might see you at church this Sunday. The trip you couldn't afford, but everyone on Instagram was going. That's not strategy. That's emotional spending. That's ego-fueled, fear-driven, image-obsessed financial sabotage And it's bleeding you. Did you know 60% of Gen Z have maxed out their credit cards? Not because of emergencies, not because of investments, but because of comparison. Because of TikTok hauls and that girl routines and influencers who forgot to mention the brand sent it all for free. You're not just battling inflation, you're battling illusions. Let's go Bible for a second. Remember the prodigal son? He didn't just waste money, he wasted purpose. He used his inheritance not to build, but to escape. He spent like someone trying to prove something, trying to fill something. And where did it leave him? In a pig pen. Not because he had access to wealth, but because he used it without wisdom. It wasn't the money that ruined him. It was the motive. And if you're honest, you've been there too. Trying to buy happiness, trying to spend your way into significance, trying to cover up the ache with Amazon Prime. But let me tell you something. Debt doesn't just take money, it takes momentum. And the longer you let it go unchecked, the harder it becomes to separate your true needs from your triggered swipes. So here's what I want you to do. Grab a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. Label one side, tool, the other, trap. Now list every single debt you have, every card, every loan, every payment. Then ask, did this help me multiply or just mask? Was this purpose or pressure? Did I build something or just bury my stress? It's going to sting, but it's also going to set you free. Because God won't bless what you fake, but He will bless what you face. Facing your numbers doesn't mean you failed. It means you're finally ready to win. And when you can name the trap, you can start escaping it. So, be honest. What did your audit reveal? Were you shocked by what you labeled a trap? Was it something you thought was a need, but now you realize it was a numb? Let's talk about it in the comments. Not to shame, but to shift. We're here to take authority, one honest step at a time. What if I told you your biggest financial prison isn't the loan, the bill, or the balance? It's the voice in your head that whispers, you're bad with money, you'll never get it right. Let's get honest. Have you ever felt a tightness in your chest before opening your bank app? Ever avoided checking your account not because of the number, but because of what that number makes you feel? You're not alone. Over 52% of Americans admit they avoid checking their bank accounts because of anxiety. That's not just financial stress, that's shame disguised as budgeting. Shame doesn't just show up in overdraft fees, it shows up in your identity. It's the story you tell yourself when you mess up financially. It's the silence that settles when you're too embarrassed to ask for help. It's the panic that leads to swiping your card just to feel in control. And it's the guilt that creeps in every time you hit pay later, knowing the weight you're adding to your future. But here's what no one told you in church. Debt is not your identity. Think about Peter, the disciple who walked with Jesus, saw miracles, and still denied him 3 times. That kind of betrayal, that kind of failure, you'd think Jesus would replace him, right? But what did he do? He found Peter, sat with him, and asked, "Do you love me?" 3 times. For every denial, not to shame him, but to restore him. And then Jesus did something radical. He didn't say, "Now go hide and figure out your life." He said, "Feed my sheep." He put him in charge of building the early church. In other words, I'm not disqualifying you for your past, I'm commissioning you in spite of it. If Jesus could do that for Peter's spiritual failure, why wouldn't He do the same for your financial ones? This is what shame gets wrong. It says your debt disqualifies you from purpose. But God says your perspective on that debt might be the very thing that sets others free. Let's reframe this. You're not irresponsible. You're underinformed. You're not cursed. You're caught in a system that profits off your silence. You're not broken. You're being rebuilt. Shame wants you to shut down. Strategy invites you to step up. And that's why this conversation matters. Because you can't fix what you're too ashamed to face. And you can't steward what you're too embarrassed to speak about. But what if this is the moment that changes that? What if this is your Peter moment? Not where God punishes you, but where He looks you in the eye and says, "I still trust you with purpose, even in the middle of the mess." Let me be clear, this isn't spiritual fluff. This is your invitation back into alignment, not because your account is perfect, but because your identity is secure. You were God-built, not to hide behind shame, but to rise with strategy, not to pretend everything's fine, but to face it with grace and guts. So let's start here. Take out a pen or open your notes app. Write down one lie you've believed about your finances. Maybe it's, I'll always be behind. Or, people like me don't build wealth. Or, God's disappointed in me. Whatever it is, call it out. Because lies lose power when you name them. And truth starts to rebuild what shame tried to bury. If this part hit home, drop your response below. Comment the lie you've believed. Or just write, no more shame. Because the moment you speak, the silence breaks. And that's how freedom begins. Do you know what freedom really is? It's not a number. It's how you move, how you decide, how you wake up on a Monday morning and face your finances without flinching. You could be making $50,000 a year and still walk in confidence. You could be making 6 figures and still be shackled to stress. Because freedom isn't about being rich, it's about being rooted. Rooted in clarity, rooted in strategy, rooted in the word, not the worry. But we've bought a lie. We've been taught to chase freedom like it's on the other side of a dollar sign, as if peace lives in your credit score or your portfolio, or the debt-free scream. But let me tell you something straight. Kingdom freedom isn't about arriving, it's about aligning. So what does that actually look like? Let me break it down. 1. Track your money like a steward, not a slave. This isn't about spreadsheets for the sake of guilt. This is about knowing where your money is going so you can tell it where to grow. God gave Adam the garden, but he didn't babysit it. He told him to tend it, to manage, to multiply, to steward. Not fearfully, but faithfully. You can't claim dominion over what you refuse to examine. 2. Speak faith, not fear. You're not broke, you're building. You're not behind, you're becoming. Do your words sound more like CNN or the Book of Psalms? Are you declaring the pressure or the promise? Don't talk like Egypt when God already parted your Red Sea. 3. Decide based on purpose, not pressure. That's what makes kingdom people different. The world says, buy now, pay later. But purpose says, pause. Is this aligned with the mission? If it doesn't serve your assignment, why are you charging it? Nehemiah didn't rebuild Jerusalem because it was convenient. He did it under opposition, with a sword in one hand and a ledger in the other. Every brick had a budget. Every gate had a guard. Purpose doesn't eliminate pressure, but it tells it what to do. 4. Tell the truth and get help. You were never meant to do this alone. Not in your finances, not in your faith. You're not less spiritual because you need a budget. You're not weak because you need accountability. You're wise. Even Jesus had disciples. Even Paul had partners. So why do you think you have to budget in silence? This is what kingdom financial freedom looks like. It's tracking without fear, speaking with boldness, deciding with discernment, and being humble enough to say, I need help. So now it's your move. Out of the 4 steps I just laid out, which one are you starting with today? Or let me ask the harder one. Which one scares you the most? Is it opening your bank app, asking for a coach, turning down a deal that's secretly draining you, owning up to that Amazon habit that's really emotional spending? Be honest. That's where the shift begins. Drop it in the comments. Say it out loud, not for performance, but for progress. Because God didn't build you for image. He built you for impact. And real impact starts when you stop pretending and start aligning. So, what's your first step? Let's take it together. One kingdom decision at a time. Do you know what freedom really is? It's not a number. It's how you move, how you decide, how you wake up on a Monday morning and face your finances without flinching. You could be making $50,000 a year and still walk in confidence. You could be making 6 figures and still be shackled to stress. Because freedom isn't about being rich, it's about being rooted. Rooted in clarity, rooted in strategy, rooted in the word, not the worry. But we've bought a lie. We've been taught to chase freedom like it's on the other side of a dollar sign, as if peace lives in your credit score or your portfolio or the debt-free scream. But let me tell you something straight. Kingdom freedom isn't about arriving, it's about aligning. So what does that actually look like? Let me break it down. 1. Track your money like a steward, not a slave. This isn't about spreadsheets for the sake of guilt. This is about knowing where your money is going so you can tell it where to grow. God gave Adam the garden, but he didn't babysit it. He told him to tend it, to manage, to multiply, to steward, not fearfully, but faithfully. You can't claim dominion over what you refuse to examine. 2. Speak faith, not fear. You're not broke, you're building. You're not behind, you're becoming. Do your words sound more like CNN or the Book of Psalms? Are you declaring the pressure or the promise? Don't talk like Egypt when God already parted your Red Sea. 3. Decide based on purpose, not pressure. That's what makes kingdom people different. The world says, buy now, pay later. But purpose says, pause. Is this aligned with the mission? If it doesn't serve your assignment, why are you charging it? Nehemiah didn't rebuild Jerusalem because it was convenient. He did it under opposition, with a sword in one hand and a ledger in the other. Every brick had a budget, every gate had a guard. Purpose doesn't eliminate pressure, but it tells it what to do. 4. Tell the truth and get help. You were never meant to do this alone, not in your finances, not in your faith. You're not less spiritual because you need a budget. You're not weak because you need accountability. You're wise. Even Jesus had disciples. Even Paul had partners. So why do you think you have to budget in silence? This is what kingdom financial freedom looks like. It's tracking without fear, speaking with boldness, deciding with discernment, and being humble enough to say, I need help. So now it's your move. Out of the 4 steps I just laid out, which one are you starting with today? Or let me ask the harder one. Which one scares you the most? Is it opening your bank app, asking for a coach, turning down a deal that's secretly draining you, owning up to that Amazon habit that's really emotional spending? Be honest. That's where the shift begins. Drop it in the comments. Say it out loud. Not for performance, but for progress. Because God didn't build you for image. He built you for impact. And real impact starts when you stop pretending and start aligning. So what's your first step? Let's take it together, one kingdom decision at a time.